The most important theme I'm seeing this week is the Mars-Venus sextile, which is a deepening in relationship to self and other. It is indeed a big week in love and romance, but not necessarily a bombastic one. It's a week where we're diving into something we started back in January. And so I'm excited to deep dive into that in this video and share with you how I'm analyzing the Mars-Venus sextile, as well as the rest of the days of this week. First, I need to, and I really want to, orient you into how I see astrology. We are not limited by the birth chart or any interpretation of the transiting sky. There is too much possibility and too much unknown in the world to reject free will. At minimum, in our deepest unconscious, astrological advice is absorbed as an unchangeable fate. As you read or you listen to this interpretation, please keep this in mind. You are in control. If you would like to read this as a transcript, click on the link below to join my free weekly newsletter where I send out this transcript that I read from. Let me just finish this little bit by saying it's really imperative for me to preface all of this because the astrology is really what's telling me to do so. And I know that sounds ironic. I feel it from within myself as well, quite deeply, quite profoundly. And I see it specifically in the relationship between Saturn and Neptune in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius is really dragging every algorithm, every edge, every horizon, every network of symbols into hell and forcing it to rebirth itself. Astrology is a part of this as an Aquarian archetype, and so we need to go with Pluto here. And I am so on board for killing what we think astrology is. Saturn and Neptune in Aries are quite literally making it our job to commit to ourselves and commit to this present moment, not to what has come before us. We are done with that. The astrology knows that we are eating ourselves Ouroboros style by giving our power away to every algorithm, even the transits. And this isn't even a moral issue. It is just a change that is inevitably going to happen. Even more squarely, my perspective is that we are not our birth charts. I think we are the empty space that is behind the chart. The fun and the play of being alive is about seeing that we can only know ourselves by our shell, if you will. And I think that that's what the birth chart is, the shell of our patterning, but not us. Without it, we don't really have anything to interface reality with. The implication of this perspective is that astrology is not the ultimate truth. As David Hoffmeister has said, astrology and really any other occult systems, these are merely metaphysical trampolines. So why do we do this? I urge you to ask that question for yourself. I love astrology because it really brings me joy. Honestly, to sit and to contemplate the unity of our diversity in the world. I love to use my mind in this way, and I find it very, very fun. Being an astrologer brings me joy. So with that said, I hope you can choose joy and find joy in your astrological interfaces, and I really hope you enjoy this because that's how I come up with my interpretations. As you continue on, consider the following. I've kind of narrowed it down to 3 rather mechanical experiences that come up when you take this or really anything else in. The first is resistance. So that would be if you don't like this or you don't understand this. Resistance is really not a moral stance. It is a mechanism of you pulling your energy back in and drawing into yourself to create more pressure from within you. If you agree or you're flowing with it, there's an appreciation and a resonance. Something you've been working on holding back previously is now able to move able to move freely through these words. And so while it's exciting, it's also not a moral stance. It's just an experience. And then of course there's some apathy or boredom, which is really just that this isn't for you right here and right now. Resistance is showing us where our work is, but it's not shadow work. It's not the parts of ourselves we're not accepting, but it is the part of ourself and our lives that we will eventually be in flow with, just not right now. Resistance shows what is actively pushing on us, what we are actively pushing, and most importantly, what energy we are consolidating in that process. Conversely, right, agreement or flow is showing you where you are growing and expanding into. Flow happens where we had previously resisted and consolidated something in order to have something to share and to flow with later. I'm gonna probably keep drilling this down because it's really important to me to give context and like an interpretive guidelines for how we're taking metaphysical information in, because otherwise it actually is unhelpful and you do just end up eating yourself in a loop, okay? Let's hop into this week. Everybody began writing an entirely new relationship book on January 7th, all right? We spent the last 4 months of this year writing the first chapter of that book. This Monday evening, chapter 1 ends and chapter 2 begins. So my first question is, did a new relationship appear or reset for you on or around January 7th? On Monday, we are shifting gears to start studying that new relationship. And this begins a year-long chapter 2 of this new relationship book. So this is a chapter where we will deepen, study, and decide, but it will go through a bit more of a roller coaster than the first short chapter did, right? That first chapter only spanning January, February, March, April, until around this time, mid-May. In this time, we've been simply kind of exploring the new relationship. That's the new phase between Venus and Mars. January really was a new year, new me kind of energy. There has been such a profound reset and recommitment to ourselves this year. A new book really began. Chapter 1 was a short 4 months. Chapter 2 is going to be a very long, almost 1 year chapter, and I'm basing this off the Venus-Mars cycle. So completing chapter 1 ends our curiosity with impulsivity and fresh new experiences in relationship. Chapter 2 begins on Monday by opening our emotional receptivity to more practical and reliable motivation in relationship. So whether this is within our partners and our friends or just within ourselves, we are shifting. And Monday evening EST, we will tangibly feel that shift. And I am so certain of this because we have 3 planets shifting signs within hours of each other on Monday evening. 2 of those planets being this exact Mars and Venus, while they are making this exact sextile to each other. This is the first major aspect since their conjunction on January 7th. Now, the 3rd planet here is the Moon, who is moving exactly conjunct to Venus at the same time as she enters a new sign with this sextile to Mars. So in my experience, when there are 3 or more planets making an exact aspect or changing signs within a few hours, we can count on a change happening visibly and experientially. So here's the other thing. Mars and Venus are both on their way to some strong conversations by mid this week and into next week. So this shift in relationship comes as almost an omen of greater work that we will be doing to grow ourselves from within this relationship, and of course also within this year-long storyline that we are entering. Specifically on Monday, Mars is first to move from instinctive Aries into much more slow Taurus around 6:30 p.m. EST. By 9 p.m., Venus changes signs, entering Cancer. Around 9:50, the Moon enters Cancer and crosses Venus in Cancer. So exactly by 1:10 a.m. that evening, which is technically Tuesday, the Mars-Venus sextile is exact at 0 degrees Taurus and 0 degrees Cancer. So let's go into that sextile even a little bit more archetypally, right? Mars in Taurus is instigating the fertile ground that we now have access to. Our active impulse is sturdy, slow, and reliable. Right? Venus in Cancer opens access to our deepest emotions, and we are allowed to go deeper into our own homes and really enjoy it there. This is a reliable, slow, and fertile impulse, is the exact catalyst that will lead us through an emotional passageway, making our soul feel even more alive and nourished by the love of growth and actions that quite literally bear fruit with Mars and Taurus. So this is an ultra smooth relationship of a sextile where the planets are essentially studying each other, right? After these first 4 months of exploration and following raw relational impulse, we draw back and deepen into the soil and really deepen into our hearts at the same time. This is a deepening and a studying that prepares us later for the first quarter square, which is a more challenging relationship, that decision that happens at the end of July. This first quarter sextile is the first of 3 that Venus will make to Mars over the rest of this year, and that's because Venus is going retrograde in October. Yes, we're already talking about Venus retrograde. Actually, within the next year, both of these planets, Venus and Mars, will go retrograde. By contrast, the first 4 months of this year, 2026, have been a straight shot relationally. But from this week forward, things slow down and begin to really burrow down as intricate patterns are woven consciously within our sense of self and our relationships. Mars enters Taurus. There's also another piece here, which is that upon its entry to Taurus, it begins a first quarter square to Pluto, which will actually perfect next week, May 26th. This is the final Pluto first quarter square that we'll get this year in the very same way that Mars will. So this tension and this choice point is one that we're somewhat familiar with. The most recent was Mercury in Taurus squaring Pluto, and that was on May 5th. There was a strong message that had to come through then as we kind of announced ourselves to the changing society that we live in. And before that, the Sun squared Pluto on April 25th, and before that, Venus squared Pluto on April 3rd. And so Mars is really the last planet to this square party, which will complete about a 2-month push that we've gone through to make the fruits of our labor visible to our changing communities. The first quarter square is very much so about the pains of labor as we are pushing something out to be shared for the first time. So there is a fear that stems from judgment and true vulnerability that is present. Because Pluto is there, it really feels like it can be a life or death decision. So this whole next week sees Mars edging into this square to Pluto, which reflects that this whole week we are pushing through a birth canal one last time. We're not going to be born till next Tuesday. And while that exact aspect isn't exact this week, the pressure of the walls pushing us are going to be felt very, very much so, I'm sure. As I mentioned, Venus enters Cancer, and she too will enter a first quarter square with an outer planet, this time Neptune. Venus in Cancer will exact her square to Neptune on Thursday and Friday of this week. So we'll be feeling it more immediately, and it is definitely a theme for this week. And it might not be carried into next week like Mars' square will. Venus in Cancer is about being open to our emotional process, to loving our home, loving our capacity to nurture. Neptune in Aries is about the mystical, unknowable truth of ourselves, the inspiration that we have within us. Venus and Neptune are actually really nice in aspect to each other as they're both very open and porous and sensitive. Venus in Cancer, we're open to our own emotions, to our home, and to our family. And Neptune in Aries, we are connecting with a very spiritualized sense of self and individuality. I think this week we will find some new experience of pleasure or joy in our home and in our emotional body, thanks to the growing spiritualization we are finding in our own presence. So Thursday and Friday, if you're feeling like you're open to something new, drawn into a new inspiration in your home, consider the fact that you've probably forgiven a part of yourself, which is Neptune in Aries, forgiving the self, in order to open, in order to birth whatever this new delightful time is. So everything I just said, all of that is being stirred up on Monday. That's Monday alone. But let's shift into the rest of the week now. On Tuesday, the moon is in Cancer all day as it has just followed Venus there. So we are feeling deeper into our enjoyment of home, our family, our roots, and our emotional body. Mercury in Gemini on Tuesday will square the lunar nodes, and we are momentarily intellectually frozen between the past and the future, south node, north node. This nodal square will move very quickly as Mercury is truly like lightning in Gemini, but still we may find ourselves contemplating if we should be using our minds in our communication to drill down into more details with the Virgo south node, or if we should use our minds for more expansion and creativity with the Pisces north node. The answer is actually choosing the expansion and creativity in the north node, as that's the resolution node. If you want more on that, leave a comment. Although Mercury is frozen in the state temporarily, it is also making an exact trine to Pluto at the same time, which sees us in a wonderful opportunity to exchange and converse socially with folks who will help us understand the transformation that's happening in our own minds. Next, on Wednesday during the day, the moon in Cancer will join Jupiter and we will feel into our growing family, however that's going to show up. On Wednesday evening, we have another vibe shift as both the sun and the moon switch signs. The sun enters Gemini and the moon enters Leo. Summer officially begins. Gemini season is here. On Thursday, the moon in Leo all day is activating some of the grand sextile vibes that we are building up to over the summer. Leo really wants your heart to sing, so we will likely find ourselves with a strong opportunity to do so. Trine Saturn opposing Pluto. As mentioned earlier, the Venus-Neptune square also happens late Thursday into Friday, and so we are choosing to be open to a new home or a new emotion, that an increasingly mystical sense of reality is opening up. On Friday, the moon again is in Leo all day, and the sun makes an exact conjunction to Uranus. Ruled by Mercury in its own home sign of Gemini, the same sign of Gemini, Friday will see us communicating and using our minds and words in brand new ways, which is probably going to be unexpected or innovative, attached to creative outputs that have a strong vocabulary aspect to them, something creative vocabulary. The moon over the whole weekend on Saturday and Sunday is in Virgo. And we are really tapped into that South Node energy of what we are organizing from our past, what habits we've returned to in order to bring them out to the world. All of the movement the first half of this week brought will likely be processed with a fine-tooth comb over this weekend, which is honestly just a very important integrative step in the chapter that we have just begun. I see that this relationship is connected to absolutely everything. The Mars-Pluto square, the Venus-Neptune square. Mercury and all the Gemini stuff is really a powerful catalyzing energy for our minds. And I think it's gonna help us feel very quick and feel differently, because so much of what we feel actually stems from our minds. We live in such an intellectualized society, especially with astrology, especially people who like YouTube, especially with social media. We're constantly taking in information. Final thing I'll say this week, we have only 2 rulers moving forward. Mercury will be ruling Pluto and Uranus from Gemini. The moon will be the major ruler of all of the other planets. Both Mars and Venus have moved into signs that are ruled by Cancer. Mars in Taurus is ruled by Venus in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. Mars in Taurus is ruling the Aries planets. It's also ruling everything else except for the South Node. The South Node is ruled also by Mercury. So we have a very strong interplay between clear communication, data analysis, research, data collecting with that Mercury rulership, and feeling. This is very much so deep emotional process that we are also talking about and articulating. That is my thoughts on this week. Check out my website in the link below. I especially want to share this workshop that I'm doing on May 30th for artists to go through our rulerships. It's a very intimate group. I'm just looking for 3 more people. We're basically repatterning from your intimate knowledge of your own creative process, overlaying that onto your birth chart rulerships, and then seeing where you can find a new entry point. Till the next one, bye for now.